Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Ronnie. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. This is the last of our three-part series showcasing Ejournal vendors, brought to you by Notary Stars. My name is Beth Hathoot, and tonight I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Ronnie Mickle, and our special guest, Mr. Nick Coville of Jurat Inc. I need to digress for a moment from my usual spiel here and tell you a quick story. Earlier this afternoon, I called Nick just to make sure he was ready to go and invited him to log in early to do all of the technical sound checks, etc., etc. His comment was, "I'm ready. If I can't get logged in or if I have a problem, it's user error." And I said, okay. About an hour and a half after I hung up from that phone call for him, my internet went down. So I'm joining you from my phone. So if I sound weird or look strange, it's because I'm trying to do this on my phone, Nick, and it's your fault. You jinxed us. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Nick and Jurat Inc. Nick tells us the idea for this product came to life when it became apparent there were no viable electronic notary journals on the market, especially for notaries in the state of California. This was created by a husband and wife duo who work in the notary and escrow industries. The Notary Ejournal by Jurat is now used by notaries in over 45 states and has made numerous groundbreaking firsts for the industry, including the development of digital thumbprint capture technology, as well as completing numerous SOC compliant reports. This sets the standard for digital notary journal data security. At Jurat Inc., they provide data security and community involvement as they continue to build this product in the direction that best fits the needs of the notary industry. Nick has also created a landing page with information for our Notary Stars community. All of you should have received that link via email before this session. If not, we'll post it again in the chat for you in just a moment. And I'm going to have to let Ronnie do that because I'm on my phone. I don't know how to do that from my phone. But Mr. Nick, if you're ready, let's get this party started.
All right, I'll start with a sound check. Can somebody confirm, maybe a thumbs up, that you can hear me?
We can hear you, and welcome.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. This is going to be a really busy year for us in terms of getting in front of people, and I couldn't have thought of a better way to start it off than by having the opportunity to speak with everybody here and show you guys what we're all about. So I do appreciate Ronnie and Beth for you guys to reach out to me and see if I'd even be interested. Absolutely. This is one of the cornerstones of what we do with this product, is continue to make it better with the feedback of everybody. Now, obviously, I'm a notary as well in the state of California, but I do things a certain way, and there's a lot of other states that do things in a lot of other ways as well. And so in order for this product to really be viable and to continue to go in the right direction, that's huge for us, is to always emphasize the community involvement and making sure everybody has a say in what we're doing, and that way it becomes actually usable for everybody. So I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for having me here. And I did put together that page for you guys to jump onto with a few pieces of information. Really, I want to dig into, I guess, the timeline of what we're going to be going over with this meeting. Now, of course, there's always going to be Q&A. I love the questions, and I love being able to see if I can answer all of them the best I can. We'll do our best to push those to the end, so make sure you guys keep those questions written down or in the chat somewhere so that we can go back to them. I definitely don't want this to get too off track, although I do love the questions, and a lot of times they're very specific to something that I am in the middle of doing if I'm presenting something. So make sure you jot that down in the chat, and we'll circle back to that so we can touch on it. There's a lot of stuff going on with electronic journals, so there's a lot for us to dig into. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be starting off with a demo of pretty much how the product works. Now, I'm going to walk you through the product, and I'm going to do a screen share real time. So it's going to be me on my computer creating an entry on the web app, and then me also side by side on the mobile app creating an entry as well too, so that I can walk you through the steps and how it looks on both mobile and web. Now the web interface is brand new, so that's a huge development for us. We spent a lot of time on it. Honestly, when we built this product a while ago, back in 2017 is when we started, it was a mobile only product because I'm in a state that requires you to make your journal entries concurrently with the notarization. So for me, there was no use case of needing to backlog old entries. I can't do that in California. And so my short-sightedness, focused just on developing just the mobile app in front of people. It didn't take long for the other states who are starting to use our app, the notaries in those states, asking for different types of environments for them to create their journal entries on. Now our product is a cloud-based, it syncs across all of your devices, and now of course it syncs across web as well. But that web environment really allows notaries to backlog. So many states either don't have a requirement to journal, or the requirement isn't as strict. It doesn't have to be concurrently with the active notarization. Maybe it doesn't require certain pieces of information that require the assignment to be present. So you can backlog now much easier than you could in the past. And that's what the web app is all about as well. So that's the goal here, is to show you both environments at the same time. And that makes it a little bit trickier for the questions, which means make sure that you, when you're thinking about a question, think about whether it's a question on the mobile app that you see, or it's going to be a question that is on the web app itself. And if you're able to type it in the chat as you think about it, and if I can work it into my my spiel as I'm giving you the demo, I'll happily work that in, because there's a lot of questions to answer. After that, I want to be able to dip into the actual feature discussion, so some more in-depth discussion about some of the features and how they work, and then we'll talk a bit about the roadmap, what we're planning to do, because we're not taking our foot off the gas, and then we'll do that Q&A. So this is going to be awesome. I'm going to go ahead and just get my two devices showing here on my screen, and I'll do a screen share. And on the left, you guys will see you're going to see a jumbled, very busy desktop and a lot of different windows, but this will function just fine. So here we go. Let me get the whole desktop up for you guys. Here we go. Now we have two different windows open, and I do see, Beth, I still see your face. Can you give me a thumbs up that you can see both screens? You see okay, beautiful, thank you, awesome. So we have the mobile interface on the right. Now, if you see that go to my son and myself, that's because my phone will lock from time to time. So bear with me. I have and this is all a live demo, so you guys can see it in real time. I'm going to walk you through creating an entry because we're going to jump straight into it. Now, this is an electronic notary journal, cloud-based, syncs across devices. The web app here is going to be where I start, and we're going to go side by side here by creating a journal entry. So this is the landing page. We do have a dashboard with a bunch of fun metrics to have a lot of data that people are really asking for more insight for. We'll dig into that in a bit, but we're going to go straight into the new entry creation process. I'm going to click to proceed to go to step one. Now, the same thing I'm going to do in my app, my mobile app. So I'm going to hit create a journal entry here on the right side, and that way I have both screens open. We do have, oh gosh, I hate that this, I think you guys see this window here. Let me get that out of the way. I think this should be better now. Okay, so we have options here for location. So I'm going to be as succinct as possible going through these steps. We prompt you through all the steps to collect the data. And then at the end of it, you review it and save it as is. So we try to make it as streamlined as possible. So we do step by step. Step one is going to be location. So each one's going to have different features for location input. You can always type. Now, you can always type in the fields at any point. Any field, you can pretty much type in it. An ID field, a location field, a document field. But some of the features we do have try to make it a bit easier for you to capture that location. Now, I've done a lot of live demos before, and I don't mind, the fact that you guys are going to be seeing a few pieces of personal information about myself. You'll see when I test my ID scans, I'm using my IDs. And then you're going to see my location as well too, but I'm not worried about that because everyone seems nice here. So the fastest way to input your location, because we try to make this quick, you're supposed to do it, ideally as fast as possible, save time so you can focus on the client. That's one of our big priorities. On the mobile app, if you guys take a look at the right side, I can hit detect current location and I can populate those fields right there super quick. But Sometimes that address might not be 100% correct. Now, those are your device's coordinates. And so some devices we found to be less accurate than others. Typically, Android devices happen to have less reliability for spot on accuracy, unless it's a brand new one. My iPhone that I'm using here, you guys see it's an iPhone 10, I guess. So it's pretty old and it still works really well. But with that being said, you can always load a favorite location as well too with that load button. So on the right side still, if you guys are watching, I can go ahead and just load one of my favorite locations. I can create a favorite location on the fly or from the menu, but I can also load that into the entry by just clicking on that. Now, if I happen to put in an address that I want to save, I could just hit that save button and I could save that as a favorite location. So if you have an office, maybe a home office, a client's office, I would go ahead and suggest making those as locations that you could easily add. And then the search bar here, last but not least, this is going to be if you want to go ahead and start typing it, it will start to populate based on your location, right? So it is going to be integrated with Google Maps, so it makes it super easy to search for that as well if you can't detect accurately. And then you can always fall back to typing in the spaces. Now to do that here on the left side, we can go ahead and do the same different types of options and type in the field if you want. The same idea here for the search bar. If we start to search here, then we're going to go ahead and find those, and you could easily populate that. You could save that as a current favorite location on the fly. And then this step is almost done. We have the date and time of notarization. Now, for our users who have been with us for a while, this is new to them, to you guys on version 2. We are very big on giving you guys as notaries more insight than ever before into your journal and into the actions you take within your journal. So we have an audit log that takes count of every action you perform within the program. So every time you're creating an entry, when you add a signer, we timestamp it. When you add your location, we timestamp it. When you save it, we timestamp it. This is meant for you to be able to bolster your position if you ever have to, in maybe a court case, if you get your journal audited, subpoenaed for any reason. Most of the time I see journals being subpoenaed, it's in typically when there's a court case involved that's not some type of negligence on a notary, but some type of fraudulent case, and they want to make sure the notary saw the person and see if they could use that as evidence. Now, unfortunately, I've seen many times where that journal entry that was requested by the notary isn't sufficient to submit into court. And typically it's because there's not enough data. It won't support the actual cause that they're trying to figure out, or the not going to help the cause as the court case moves forward. But what we do believe is that if we can give you more than enough information, including audit log, timestamps of everything that happened, it makes it so that your position as a notary is just a bit stronger. So the audit log is what people have typically been used to seeing in terms of the timestamps, and then the completed timestamp when you finish the entry is when that is going to be based on sequentially. So what your journal will be based on sequentially was the completed timestamp. Now we have a manually added timestamp on the right side. You're going to see me go ahead and select that. That allows me to backlog a journal entry. And that is very important. Now it's a small thing, but it's very important for the sequentiality or the sequential nature of your journal. This timestamp is going to be what your journal is sequential based on. Now for notaries who have been with us for a long time, the completed timestamp is used in place of the notarization date and time for all old entries moving forward. So the sequential nature of your journal won't change, but any new journal entries, you will be selecting that manually added date and time right here at the top. So you see that time right there, I just added that, and I can go ahead and do the same thing on this left side. So you can see I select the date and time, and I'll go ahead and move to step 2. Step 2 is going to be the signers. Now this is very important because we built this based on how my brain thinks things work really well when I'm collecting data. The hierarchy of data that I'm collecting and assigning. And as a loan signing agent, I would do a lot of like a high volume loan signings. And that was what I primarily did. So I'm saying that so that you guys can see where my point of view was when I created the steps. At the end of the day, we just want to be able to clearly walk you through each step to collect that data. And hopefully it is clear, but anytime people aren't satisfied or there's something wrong, I always want you guys to reach out and say, this doesn't feel right, or maybe change the word here, try this, because my brain is only one brain. So step 2, we have the signers. And in the hierarchy of data, signers are going to go before documents, because then documents will be associated to the signers from there. So if you take a look at the right-hand side, we're going to go ahead and add signers. And we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at the ID scanning, but we have different options for adding your signers. Now, you could type the names, but if you're going to scan the ID, you don't have to do that because it'll pull it in for you. And this is how you're identifying the person. Now, if you just type their names and you hit save and move forward, it'll save that signer with no identification. You could always go back, add one later. So this is typically for people who are going to create drafts. Now, the point of this product, in my eyes, was to make it so efficient and fast that you didn't have to make drafts. But then we realized quickly that people still like drafts anyway. So we added the functionality for people to make drafts. You could have as many drafts as you want. We don't cap that. You could have 100, 1,000. If you want to get them done ahead of time by a week, by a day, it doesn't matter. The audit log is going to keep track of everything you add in, but then you'll still have the completed timestamp and you'll still have the manually added notarization date and time that will help you clarify when the actual notarization took place. So keep that in mind. But what I'll go ahead and do is I'll add the identification. We won't do any credible witnesses or personally known. We'll add the identification and we're going to go ahead and scan my ID. Now, another new feature that people will see is the omission of the serial number for states that don't allow the notaries to capture that information. I do want to say, like I mentioned earlier, that you could always manually change these values at any point. Now, if you are dealing with the actual identification, I highly recommend you to not change the values that are on the ID. In my professional opinion, as a public servant and as a notary, my job is to verify that person's identity, which includes taking a look at tangible identification. But a lot of times we do see a user who will ask a question such as, I scanned an ID, but they have an updated address. So can I just change the address on that address field here on the ID? And of course you can do that, but I don't think you would want to do that because in my professional opinion, that would be altering the data that you are capturing that is associated directly with that identification. So if you did ever get that subpoenaed or questioned or looked at, and you had to explain why the addresses didn't match what was on the tangible ID, and you forget why, or you might feel strange saying that I just changed it because it was updated and it wasn't reflected on their ID. We want to avoid that if possible. So keep that in mind. We're going to pull the information as we do the front and back scan. Now, one thing you're going to notice is at the top, it says, note, pictures of scanned IDs are not stored and are not reproducible. I cannot tell you how angry sometimes we have our users who really, really, really want a picture of an ID that's scanned. I'm of the mindset that I don't want to provide the ability for users to capture too much information that might not be relevant to the notary journal itself. And in my professional opinion, our business stance is that we don't want to allow you to capture that photo in any reproducible manner. We'll scout the data for you, but we cannot capture the photo. We do not give you the option to capture the photos. Now, as everything that is, voter based, we always ask our people what they like, and a lot of people keep asking for it. So I can't say that we'll never allow you to do that, but I'm of the mindset that you don't need to capture that in your notary journal if you're capturing the information, and it might be irresponsible, but that is one man's opinion. So keep that in mind. We're going to scalp the data on the front. This is an optical scan on the front and then a barcode scan on the back. So this is a very robust scan. And what's happening within a matter of seconds is we are taking the optical scan without snapping a picture. We're pulling all the data. We are then scanning the back and we are populating the fields appropriately. But if they don't match, we're going to flag that for you. So that is one of our fraud deterring features that we built in, is so that we can help you as a notary spot an ID that might not have matching information on the front or the back. So I'll show you how that works in a minute as well, but I'll just do the scan ID so you guys can see how quick it is. I do front and I do back. Now you guys notice I just held that ID up and I just held it even portrait orientation, not landscape. I didn't have to have it flat on the table, but it's all about lighting, right? This is something I'm testing with this constantly. I'm constantly using this in different programs, different applications. So I'm pretty efficient at it. For new users who are just getting started, if you hit that scan identification button and then you sit there for too long and you can't get it to match up, or your device's camera doesn't focus on it, it might time out, you might have to do it again. So it is very device specific. And that sometimes causes a bit of frustration for people who are using devices that might be a bit older. Maybe their cameras aren't as efficient on their device as some of the newer ones. But you guys saw in real time how fast it pulled that data. And we do flag a few things, like, for example, the expired flag right there. We just let you know that, hey, that ID is flagged. Now, if you want, you could still save that and you could add a second identification if you'd like. That's no problem. So what I will do is I'll show you guys how that looks. Right, we have this person who has their ID associated with them. And we have the ability to remove that, and we have the ability to add another identification. So the same process is going to happen. What I'm going to show you guys here in real time is scanning the front of the ID, the one I just scanned, which is an expired ID, and the back of my current ID. And that way you guys could see in real time the flag that we give you guys when they don't match. So I'm going to hit scan here, and we'll go ahead and scan the front, and then I'll grab my other one, scan the back, and then we bring up this prompt here that says, hey, watch out. Now, this is just meant to help you as a notary deter fraud, or give you a little bit of an indication that there might be something you want to look into, right? Nothing is foolproof. And of course, you might find an ID that is fraudulent, but is matching both front and back barcode data and optical scan. But if we can do anything to help you deter fraud as a public servant, I'm all about that. So in this case, we pull up any value that does not match between those two, and then we tell you, hey, maybe you should rescan it again, or you could just move forward with whatever selected value you would like from the front or back of either of those cards, and then you can move forward and you could add that. So nothing is going to help you stop 100% of fraud, but if we could help reduce the risk by providing tools like that scan optically on the front and compare the data embedded on the back in real time, I think that's super cool. So that's how that works there. Now, unfortunately, when you are on the web here, so you guys can now see on the left side here, when I add the signers, I don't have the cool scanning ID feature. We can build that in, and we're thinking about doing it. There is a web-based module that's available for us to build into this web app, and it's one of those things where it might be too finicky depending on what laptop or computer you're using. So right now, you don't have the cool scanning feature on the actual web app. You just type in all the information like you would normally do if you didn't have that technology. Excuse me here, let me do this. And you could add the identifications as well too. You could save them without an identification. You could do the different types of identifying the person. So how were they identified? Typically, it's going to be adding that identification here. You can enter in all that information right there, and you can hit the save button. Now I save that person with no identification. That's also similarly how it would look if you were creating a draft and you wanted to put the name of the person in there, but you don't have their identification yet. Now, why would you want to do that? If you want to go ahead and add the documents and associate the signer with the documents ahead of time. Not everybody wants to do that with their drafts, but some do. So I'll show you how that looks in just a moment. This one here, I saved that signer's information, and now we have John Doe on the left side. They are in this entry. And on this other entry, I have the two identifications associated with that one signer. So we're still on step 2 for both different platforms. We're going to go to next. On the right side, you see now I go to step 3. Same here. I'm going to go next. And now we're at the meat and potatoes. This is where you add the documents. So we add signers before documents because now there's going to be association between the signers and documents. This is how we allow you to create an entry with multiple documents being notarized and multiple signers being notarized, but without requiring you to have to associate all signers and documents at the same time, every time. So what I mean by that is I'm going to add the fees here. I can add a notary fee. Now, another thing that users who have been with us for a while will notice is now we have additional fee categories for you to select as well too. Now, a lot of people always ask, what do I put in here? Every state's going to tell you what you should and shouldn't put, or what you can and can't put. So we like to stay away from that conversation as much as possible in terms of giving legal advice. But we do now give you a lot of different options for additional fees to add into that notary journal entry. Now, if you see where we're going with this, the whole point of this is to give you guys more insight into your notary journals, but we don't want to cross over into a different type of product altogether. So a lot of people who might use a Notary Assist, we love them, they're amazing. They are what you want to use, for example, for your accounting software. We don't go in that direction, but we do want to provide you with more insight into that notary journal entry. So, for example, here, all the fees we collect, we give you a nice and pretty display of on the web app, and we'll look at that in just a bit. But that might not be everything that you charged, right? It might be that your state only allows you to write in your journal entry a maximum of we'll say $15 per signature So you might not put truthfully what's you're actually charging. There might be another charge to the signing service, etc. So always keep that in mind. We don't want to go in the direction of trying to become an accounting software for you, but we do want more insight into the data in your journal. You could add notes at any point in time. These are general notes for the entry itself, and then we have the documents being added. So documents are all going to be coming from your document library. This is a customizable document library. You could access it from, if you see on the left side of the screen here, I have document types. I also have that on the menus in the app as well too, and I can show you that in just a bit. Your document library, when you start off with a trial account, you're going to go ahead and have a bunch of documents that we just give you, but there's no way we can keep up with different states and different industries. So people started to request when we first launched to add more and more to the library. We couldn't keep up. There's too many. And we already get complaints that we give you too many to begin with that aren't relevant to that notary's industry. So just customize it. You could remove a document at any point in time. You could add a new type. You'll see on the top right here on the app, I could create a new type and we could just call that cool new document. And then we can associate with it whatever type of notarial act you're performing. We'll say it's an acknowledgement. We'll save that as a new document type. Now, everything that you're seeing we do syncs across all of your devices. Everything's cloud-based. So if you are creating new document types in the web app, they're going to be usable in the field when you're on the mobile app and vice versa. Something to keep in mind. Now, the document library is where you add the documents, right? Here on the left side of the screen, you'll see I have the Add Documents button, which will pop up something very similar. So we'll have the documents. You can see cool new document here on the web app. That happened really fast, right? It already synced across. I have it now available here. Then I could add however many of each document that I would like. So in this case here, I'm going to go ahead and just add these 3 documents. And over here on the right side, I'll add a couple more documents into this one. These are 2 separate entries that I'm creating at the same time concurrently, just so you guys know. So they don't have to match. I'm just giving you guys examples of both types. So we're going to go ahead and add those documents to the entry. Now, both platforms will give you the ability to add document-specific notes for each and every single document. You can edit the notarization type on the fly. That will not alter the saved document that's in your library. It just allows you to change it for a one-time use. So you can have a situation where you have 2 different types of documents that are titled the same, but they're different notarial acts. So that means you could have a deed of trust that is an acknowledgement. You could have a deed of trust associated with a jurat. Not that I could see the use case for that, but there are some times where we do see loan signings where a different out-of-state lender decides that they want to use a different type of notarial acknowledgement, and they get mad at you if you try to change that. So those are examples of how the document library works with multiple types of documents with the same title. Add the notes if you want, and you could remove association with a signer here as well too. Now, this is really important for everybody to understand how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go on the right side. I'm going to go back to add a second signer so that you can see how it works in a situation where you might have a husband and wife signing the set of loan documents, but maybe the husband is a title-only spouse. He's not on all of the loan documents. The wife's name is on every single loan document, but he's not. So there are going to be situations where you find yourself where you have to remove the association of one of the signers with the documents, and that's why we have this setup for hierarchy of data with step 1, 2, and 3, so that you can have the signers' names before adding the documents and remove associations. So if Nick is not signing this one specific document, you just click that check mark next to his name that you guys can see on the right side here. That circle is now empty and he's no longer associated with that document. I can do the same with the next document down here. And this only removes the association with that single document. So all subordinate objects that are linked to Nick Colville will not be linked to that document. That means that the thumbprints, the signatures, all of that will not be associated with that document. But these documents are still all housed within a single notary journal entry, or you could call it a signing if you'd like. But that's how removing associations work. And it's very important because you don't have to create steps 1 through 6, create an entire notary journal entry for John Doe, and then go back to step 1 for John Doe's wife and redo that whole thing. That would not be efficient, and we're all about efficiency. So the same thing would happen right here. We have, the checkmark associations with the signers. In this case, we only have one on that right side there, so we don't have to mess with that. Now I'll move forward. I won't add any notes. We're just going to move forward here. I got to add the fee on this side. Excuse me. Fee here. Now, I guess, gosh, I can't forget one of our most popular features is the signing packages. So when we launched in 2020, signing packages came on launch as well too. So we've always had them. They're more geared towards people who do the same set of documents over and over again. Myself as a loan signing agent, that was what I needed. I needed to go to a loan signing and be able to input Bank of America refinance super quick, right? So if the set of data, for example, I like right here is something that I'm going to see over and over again, I could save this as a signing package on the fly, or I could always create signing packages in the menus on both, the web app and mobile. And then I could go ahead and input that quickly into the entry. So if you do see on the right side in the app, I'm going to go ahead and hit add package. And I have all the different test ones I've made here. And you could put the fees, you could put the notes, you can put the documents themselves. And then the other information that is, different between every journal entry, the signer's names, for example, and the number of signers, that stuff is going to be populated based on the actual specific entry you're in. And you could always edit the information as well, too, on the fly without it altering the saved signing package. So if you take a look here on the right side, I'll go ahead and just add this package on the top. Say this is a Bank of America refinance. I'm going to hit choose package. Now it's going to tell me, I already have stuff in there. So what do you want to do? I'm going to go ahead and just replace that so that I replace it with everything that I want for the Bank of America loan refinance signing there. So now I redid that whole right side there. Now all the documents are a little bit different. I could change it on the fly. Again, John might not be signing that one. And maybe the fee's different here than what's actually saved in that package. And that's okay. So I could change it on the fly, and then I could just go ahead and hit next. But again, you could save that as a package on the fly or from the menus at any point in time. And those also sync across as well too. So your signing packages on mobile, you'll see them here. And that's mainly, again, for the people who see the same docs over and over again. If you're somebody who specializes in just general loan, general notary work, you do a lot of one-offs, people walk into your place, you might not have a use case for that, but at least it's an option for you there to save some time. I'll hit next, and I'm going to go to step 4. Now we're at the easy part, right? So same here, I'm going to go next. We have signatures. We have specific signature by mark workflows for people who are performing a signature by mark. Now, it's a very rare occurrence for notaries to do that, but we do have to do that in most states where we're allowed to, or we're permitted to by our Secretary of State or commissioning body. But interestingly, there's almost no legal requirement nor guidance from any Secretary of State regarding signature by mark requirements for the journal entry. If the state has specific requirements for it on the document itself, that's typically where they stop. They don't discuss in terms of the actual code what you're supposed to do, or if there is any code pertaining to how to capture a signature by mark in a journal. Now, I do like to point out at this point in time that your Secretary of State is incredibly important at providing clarity and guidance, but Secretary of State's administrations change often. They come and go, and most important, I always tell notaries, is to focus on what does the code say. For example, we have a lot of people say, well, I called the Secretary of State's office and they said this. And then we look at the code and I say, great, let's take a look at the laws themselves and what did they actually say? And there's none of that there. And it turns out that there was somebody answering the phones that may not have knew what they were talking about. They said something incorrect, and then it was misleading to the notary. So looking at the code itself, I have yet to find a state that has actual verbiage pertaining to signature by mark journal requirements, but we still give it the option to capture that information if you would like to, by capturing the mark of the signer and then the witnesses themselves. So I'm not going to change the orientation of my phone doing a screen share, because that would ruin the screen share. But you could change your phone to landscape orientation for the signature panel to be more usable. You could use a stylus, you could use your finger. But in this case, the signature by mark workflow, I was allowed to add my mark or John Doe's mark and then the witness information associated with that. And that's pretty important if you want to capture that information. You don't have to. The signatures here on the left side, you guys can see now I have a dialog little window that pops up here. I could add that signature here as well. So I'll add the signature there, and I'll add both signatures for these signers in this entry here on the right. Now, the digital thumbprint capture, we could dig into that more later in terms of how cool it is. I'll show you guys on the right side how it looks, because this is exclusive to us. We developed this technology. I needed to develop this technology because I'm in California, and that was one of my problems, was the thumb printing over and over and over and over again. It was a hassle for myself and my clients. Nobody liked it. I can't tell you, the coolness factor is huge with this product. We have a lot of people here in California who would see this in action and say, gosh, that's just really cool. And it saves a lot of time. One thumbprint, one signature, not a million per how many documents were notarized, right? And so that's typically why we do it in a notary journal entry fashion that can have house multiple documents, so that you could associate the data of the signers with multiple documents and create essentially a quote unquote entry for each, but house it in one signing event. So on the right side, if you guys go ahead and take a look, I'm going to go ahead and hit next, and I'm going to do the fingerprint scanning. Now, I don't think anybody could see my actual camera, but I'll show you this when I get off the screen share. I have the little device that we have it sent from South Korea. That's where the manufacturing is, and we have integration with this built in. So you don't need to go onto your actual phone device settings. It's all internal within the app, which makes it super easy. Just Bluetooth, connect straight in the app. You guys will see what happens. I hit add fingerprint, and it's going to start scanning for that device. And if you have any devices that are on and in the area, they will, of course, populate here. This is usually the time in which I tell notaries, boot up the scanner at this point. Once you're on this screen, you don't have to have it on the whole time, just to save battery life. And I can go ahead and connect to it. So I connected to it. And again, I didn't have to go out of my app at all. I just connected to it, and it was easy as that. So from there, I'll hit capture fingerprint. Now I can select which fingerprint I am capturing, and then I'll hit capture fingerprint. And then I'm going to have my finger pushed down firm onto the actual device itself, and you see it start to send that information over. So it's sending packets of data over. It's not sending an image file. So that means that if there's any interruption in that process, right, it'll have you restart and cut that and start back over again, because you're not sending an image file. You're sending packets that we are then using internal algorithms to create what looks like the image, which is super important for notaries to understand. So there you go. That print to me looks a little bit light. So if I wanted to, I can go ahead and do it again. And if for anybody who's done printing before, there's a million different scenarios in which, prints will be light or too dark, or there's not enough oil in the skin, whatever it might be. It's a hassle. A lot of times I'll have the signer just breathe onto their thumb before pushing down firmly, and then they'll be good to go. But in this case, I'll just say, okay, fine, I like it, great. I'll hit save fingerprint, and then I'll move on. I can do the same thing for John Doe. So I'll do John Doe's, I'll capture his fingerprint as well, and then we'll move forward from there. So again, this is one of our exclusive technologies. Nobody else has this, and we're very proud about that. I'm actually excited because a lot of notaries who aren't even in California do fingerprinting in their journal as a best practice. And I wasn't aware of that prior to launching this product, because I was just a California notary. But it is cool to see a lot of different notaries in other states who also do it as a best practice and like having a better solution like this in place. So we have fingerprints now associated with this. And then we go ahead and hit the next button. Now, of course, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that I'm just going to hit next because I can't add the fingerprint. We don't have that integration built in onto the web app at this point. So now we have this to review. We just get to review all the information that we are capturing, make sure that it's correct. And you can see the audit log down here on the left side at the bottom, which is telling you all the important information about what happened. And then on the right side, you'll see here, I'll hit the review button again. We'll go to the last screen. Now, this screen is pretty cool. I really like what we added here to this final step. And it's on both now. You can see on both screens, we have a recipient email address. Now, this is for two main purposes. Number one, it's so that you can brand your services as a notary. And number two, it's so that we could make it very easy for the signer to reach out to you if they happen to need to request maybe a copy of that notary journal entry for what you created. Now, that's, again, very rare that a signer will directly ask a notary for a notary journal entry copy, but most often, or the biggest use case of this is really so that you as a notary can provide us a great service first and foremost. And if you do a great job, and then at the end you give them your business card and stuff, the chances of them keeping that business card or being able to find it might be less than them being able to find in their email the confirmation of what happened. So what did they receive in that email? They receive a generic email from the back end of our system. So the server sent them something that says, here's who you saw. So the notary's information that you could change on the fly. So I could put all my branding here, John Stellar Signing Service, I'm the best, thanks for the reviews. And then I can send that along. So that's going to go in there into that email. It's going to tell the signer the names of the documents that were notarized and the date and time. It's not going to give them a complete journal entry on or immediately, right? So it's not an actual official journal entry copy. We try to make sure that there's not too much information exposed. Same with the identification information. That's not included in there. It's pretty much just like a who, what, when. And that way, if they need to request, they have the information to request, because every state's request process is different. But then you could brand yourself. So if they ever want to have their trust notarized by you a few months later, they can search your email box for John Stella Signing Service or Jurat Inc. or Notary, and any one of those keywords will hopefully bring up that email. They can reach back out to you. So that's the review process. Now, after the review process, you go ahead and hit complete, and it's going to go ahead and sync it to the server and save it. Now, once it's saved and synced to the server, you can't edit that information anymore. And that's typically how it works with the actual data security laws for notary e-journals or electronic notary journals. Tamper-proof or tamper-evident is typically the verbiage they use. Now, you can save it as a draft all the way up until this point. So you see here on the right side, I already saved it. It's locked down. On the left side, it says draft saved at the top. I can hit draft list. I can go anywhere else at any point in time without hitting this complete button, and I can come back and it'll be saved as a draft. So that's how drafts work. Creating a draft is just you creating an entry and not finishing it. So I could go anywhere else, maybe document types, and then I can go back to my saved drafts, and then I could pick up where I left off. So I created a few different drafts so that I'll be able to show you guys a few examples of them. But this is pretty much how the drafts work. You can create, again, as many as you'd like at any point in time. You could hop back into them. Like, I don't know where I am here, but okay, I was on step 2. I can go right back in there and pick up where I left off. As long as I don't go to the very, very end on step 6 and then hit the complete button. At that point, the data can't be manipulated. So these here, I could delete this draft. On the left side, you see me deleting that draft, it's gone. But if it's saved and finalized, like you see on the right side, this white one right here, when I view it, I could view it, and that's pretty cool. I could view all the information, and I could view the audit log that we talked about. Super important. Again, this is bolstering your position as a notary. Not only did I write down everything I was supposed to by law, but I have extra actual evidence that shows that I was here at this given point in time, scanning this person's ID, scanning their thumbprints. We think that's pretty cool to give you guys. And so, but you can't alter that once it's saved. You can strike the signing. So striking it is meant to be like an analogy to if you had to cross out maybe an entry in your hardbound journal, right? Maybe you accidentally made one an error or something messed up, and you're not going to wipe that out. That would be really bad and obvious that you tampered with that notary journal. You'd probably just cross it off and start on the next line. So same thing here. I can hold down and I can strike that signing if I'd like, and it'll go ahead and just create the illusion of it being stricken or less important, but the data is still there because you're not supposed to be able to actually tamper with that data. You can, however, always delete a draft. So like you saw on the left side, now you'll see on the right side, I can hold down on this draft here and I can resume it, or I can delete that draft at any point in time. And last but not least, you can also always edit the notes as well too. So you can't alter the data of a saved entry, but I can open it and I could add notes afterwards, which is super important. Now that we're viewing this entry, we'll go ahead and take a look at how it looks when you're viewing it. You have the timestamps that are important at the top. When did you start it? When did you complete it? When was it uploaded to the server? And then what's the notarization date and time? And then we have our unique identifiers that help it identify against the server for authenticity purposes. All the information here we have captured from that entry. Now, you can't, from the app, do any exporting. That has to be done on the website. So you go to the website here, and from here, you can actually generate an export. I can go to my journal. I can, that one was already stricken, so that's cool. You can see how quick that was. Now I can open an entry, and from here, I can generate in 2 different fashions. I could generate a signing report for the entire set of data, or if I have multiple documents and I just want to generate an export for just one, I could do that by going to the document, hitting generate document report. So if you were to look at how this is comparable to a hardbound journal, if you had to scan your journal, if any of you have had to do that in the past, that's awful. But you would try to get parchment paper or construction paper, cover up all the other entries, and then put face down on the scanner the one entry line that you want. And if they wanted multiple that happen in the same signing event, then you got to do the same thing, wash, rinse, repeat. In this case, you could just generate the document report for a single document within that entry, or the entire entry itself. Could be 4, 5, 6 documents. It doesn't matter. So that's how the exporting works. But keep in mind, you can't do that when you are on mobile. Now, another thing to note is that on mobile, you do have offline functionality. I'm getting to the point now where I'm trying to just fill you guys all in with the information I possibly can about how it works. You could do offline entry creation. We give you 12-hour window of offline functionality from the last point of authentication, which means if you signed in at 8 a.m. and you are in the field at 1 p.m., you open up your app and you have no cell service, you're still going to be able to create that entry. And what will happen is you'll create all that entry information, you'll add it all in. A few features might not work, like location detection, because you don't have any connection at all. That's fine. You just manually type it in. And then once you hit the complete button, it'll try to sync it to the server. It'll fail, and then it will end up saving it in this top right. You'll see the little cloud with the icon here. That's where we save your pending completed drafts. So you see that looks like a completed draft, still the coloring of a draft, but it's marked as complete because you did attempt to upload it, and therefore theoretically you shouldn't be able to tamper with that evidence, and therefore you can't delete those. You can only now upload those to the server. So that's what the offline functionality is, 12 hours. So we always tell people, if you're just not sure you're going to have connectivity, no problem. Sign in at your home before you leave, at your office before you leave, and then get to the signing location and go ahead and open up that app. And even if you have no connectivity, you'll be good to go. So I'll go ahead and focus now on the actual this screen here, because the mobile app itself, you know, for creating the entries, we pretty much saw everything we can. You could search for entries, all that cool stuff, but that's a given. You could change a lot of stuff that we talked about, being able to change your document library, your favorites, your signing packages. One cool thing that we added to in version 2 is the oath and affirmation scripts. So if you are giving oaths and affirmations in the field, a lot of times you'll have a placard or a card or a piece of paper that you'll carry with you. Now we just have that for you in your notary journal for you to carry around with you as well. So it makes it a bit easier if you have to have people recite after you, and then you could always edit it as well too. So we give you a few different oath and affirmation options on the fly, but if you want to edit it, you could just edit it, change it, and then update it, and then you'll be good to go. So the oath and affirmations you can see on the left-hand side as well too. The same, you could edit and change that. You have a lot of options that are going to be usable here on the left side of the web app, and not so much the mobile app. So we try to make them as comparable as possible. But if you were to go into the notary user profile, you could have your oath affirmation scripts, and you can edit them as well. Here they sync, so that it'll update onto the mobile app. So again, that way, if you need to recite, have somebody recite after you, you could just pull up your script there on the fly. And I think that's, oh, you know what? The last thing I'll show you guys is privacy mode. That's another cool one. So this one, Jeff, always got to shout out Jeff here. Jeff Clark, great guy, user of ours for a long time. And I love it when people give us feedback. I especially love it when they find something that they hate about our product, because that's how we get better. And Jeff said at one point, he said, I want to be able to be a bit more private with signers' names in the journal entry. And to me, I was thinking, gosh, like how could somebody's wandering eyes look at the device and see the names? Like, that's pretty small, fine print. But we wanted to provide that anyways for future use case as well. So privacy mode now will allow you to just hash all your entries. If you guys look at the right hand side, all the signers' names are hashed, and that way it's something that other people can't see. If you happen to open up your app and you're going to hand it to the other signers to sign, no signers' names will be present there. So you could turn it off. It doesn't alter the actual data, so you're not in any position where you have to worry about that. And I think that is it for the mobile app. So that means that I can focus on back over here to this thing here and show you guys a little bit more on the web app. Most of the features, again, are very similar, except we do have the exporting we talked about. All your subscription management, everything happens here. The feature requests, this is really important for us. I can't tell you guys how important your feedback is. So this is a really cool interactive way for people to come in, log in, and they can just take a look at the ideas that people have. These are real, genuine requests right now from our users who are coming in and they're saying, I want to do this. So let me go ahead and add, please add something cool. And I can select what category is that going to be for the mobile app, and I can go ahead and create that post. And that's how it goes. And then us as moderators on the back end, we get to take that request. We get to, pretty much vet it, see if we want to add it in there. People can comment as well too. So you can see here people commenting. It's just a great interactive way to get people on board with making the product better for their state or their use case. Because again, I'm only one person. It's very important for me to get that insight from you guys. So feature requests here is something you can do on the web app. We have a great affiliate program as well too. All the profile account stuff, that's pretty rudimentary stuff, so I'm not going to dig too far into that. You could have multiple notary commission profiles if you'd like. You can block devices, which is pretty cool. So if you sell one of your old Apple devices and for security purposes, you don't want to allow it to log back in, or maybe your crazy spouse stole something, you could go in here and you could block that device from ever being able to log in again. So security is really big for us. Being able to provide you with enough tools to do this confidently, because going into a digital age, it's very, very something you got to be very cautious about. So, on that note, I guess as well, it's important for me to point out that we are the only SOC compliant notary journal software available, right? And this is pretty much when you just pay an outside auditing firm to come in and tear apart everything you do and tell you whether or not you're doing it up to industry standards. So similar to HIPAA compliance, we are SOC compliant. We're the only ones that have achieved that, which is really awesome. All that matters to me is giving you guys the confidence to go digital. So that's really big for us. Now, I'm pretty sure the last thing I didn't show you guys was a dashboard widgets. This is something that's brand new, and I really want everybody who's starting to see this, especially our seasoned users, to start thinking about what type of information they want to see widgets for, so we could build it out for them. Right now, we're just trying to compile some different pieces of information or data that are currently available and easy for us to provide access to. Like, we have a time frame. You could do the last 30 days. You could easily see the document types you've been using. You could easily see the fees by category, how much you're collecting for that period of time, things like that. This is what we talk about, not going in the direction of accounting software, but giving you more insight and how can we better do that for you guys. So that's dashboard widgets right there. And then you could export. I guess last thing to show you guys is you could export as well on the web app for months at a time. So if I do go to my journal exports here, and we're doing a lot of work here to try to make this better and better as well too. The PDF template and the sequential reports, you could generate a report for a prior month, and that way, if you do want to house it maybe on your own hard drive as a backup, you could do that at any point in time. You could generate a sequence report, which is our backend comparing the identifier and the timestamps to the actual report itself, just in case you needed to bolster your position for the sequential nature of your journal. And gosh, I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you guys. And so what I will do is I will stop the screen share, because I'm pretty sure that I shared enough for us to discuss. And I will go ahead and start looking at some of the questions here that I want to make sure that we can answer. At any point, you could always.
That was a ton of information, Nick. Holy cow. What a beautiful app too, right?
Well, I look at the time, it's already been an hour, and I feel like I'm just getting started. So I guess I should take a breather, but yes. So Beth, how should we do this? Should I jam out all the questions in the chat and then have people raise their hands as I do that, so I could answer those questions as well?
Some of the chat questions are posted there for people to remind themselves so they can raise their hand and ask. So let's go ahead and start with the hand raised. Susan, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, Nick. It's nice to meet you. I've got a question. I have had several signature by marks lately, and they wanted to use their thumbprint. When you get to the point in the journal where they're supposed to sign their name or put their mark instead of their signature, if they're going to use their thumbprint, what do you do? Because you're not at the point where you're taking the thumbprint on the device.
Yeah, that, gosh, if I could think of an incredibly uncommon situation, that would be probably top of the list of things that I almost never see. I've had a few users ask for that because a mark can be a thumbprint. So, well, we have thumbprint capture technology. Add that to the signature panel. We haven't done that yet. So in this case, you would still have the person put their mark or mark. They wouldn't be able to technically associate a digital thumbprint with that signature section where they would be making their mark. Are we going to build that? Absolutely. But it's one of those so rare that we don't. It's not high on the priority. So like right now, what you'll see is you'll see the mark. They'll make their mark. Then you'll open the next window, which you saw me do, and it'll have the witness information for that as well. Capture their information. You could always type in the notes. You could always add that signer's thumbprint, the person who's signing by mark. You would always keep going down the line of the steps. So you were in step 5 for the signature by mark. You could just go to step 6, capture the thumbprint digitally so that it is associated with the entry, and then add in the notes any clarifying verbiage about the signature by mark being performed by that thumbprint, or that thumbprint being the mark as well. I would find no reason why that wouldn't be completely viable in any Secretary of State's code or any viewpoint of any entity that cared. But in terms of on that one specific page, you can't add that right now.
Okay, then one more question, if you don't mind. I know we can scan the driver's license and things, but can we scan other types of IDs, like a passport or something else?
You can. So passports as well, you just scan the front, although one data field that's not capturable for, or it's not a data field that you could pull from, is the issuance date for passports. So you could scan the passport, you just scan the front, you would open it up, scan the front, it'll populate everything but the issuance date, and you could just manually add that in. We always get a lot of requests for, of course, can you start supporting this type of document to scan, or this type of document or identification to scan, or what about foreign passports and everything. So we have integrated with us. Our scanning software is an integration with a very powerful software solution that helps us. And so a very well built out, well funded integration. And our reliance upon them for their document supporting types is pretty much what it comes down to. So they support a lot more document types than we even allow you as a notary to scan right now, because we're only a US based application at this point. So we do get a lot of people who say, well, what about, I want to do, the Mexican driver's licenses for when I'm in Mexico. And I say, well, you probably shouldn't use us if you're in Mexico right now. So we can't quite help you there. So we don't support certain document types, even though the integrated software could theoretically allow us to. So typically people have no issues with their states, even though every state's continuing to update and change the layout and these new security features and stuff. The only hard point I find personally is that it's hard to keep up with so many different devices in themselves between Android and iOS. Every time it seems like there's a new a phone that comes out or a new iOS update, Android is the worst, in my opinion, at accidentally messing something up that requires us to go back in and fix it. So there's often times where you'll see somebody who has maybe one issue with one strange old 3 rendition prior Pennsylvania license that's not scanning, for example. Those things happen, and it's unfortunate, but we do our best to stay current, up to date, and as always, as a fallback, you can just manually type in those data fields. But I think most of the time you'll have success with the type of IDs that you're scanning that we support.
Awesome, thanks so much.
Of course.
So Nick, you were talking about that signature by mark, and I'm tap dancing here, guys. You need to get your hands up while I'm just yakking at Nick for a second. Obviously, Arizona doesn't have any Ejournal laterality. We can't use an Ejournal, but that signature by mark, our state statutes don't say we need a witness. We don't need to write the person's name next to their mark. There's no requirement. If they want to make a rabbit head as their signature, then they're welcome to do that mark. So in those cases, we default often to fingerprints. because that's the only thing that we can really definitively say, yeah, that guy was here. He can't write his name, can barely make a mark, so we're gonna get a fingerprint. So put that in your notebook for development for Arizona if we ever get on the map.
You got it. It is on the list. Consider it on the list.
Awesome. Mr. Ronnie, did you have any quick questions? Otherwise, Nick can probably just start combing through the chat.
Well, I'd like to say this. Nick has done an amazing presentation, and there's also been some amazing questions. And I really want to encourage if you put a chat in, just to kind of be friendly to Nick to make sure he understands that he's very welcome here. Don't make him go digging through the chat if you've got a good question. All of the ones I've seen are really good. Come on, raise those hands and talk to him. This is the chance you get to talk to the owner and developer and everything else here. So, we brought you the horse's mouth. Now it's time for you to talk to it. I actually see one of the I thank you, Ms. Sharon. We'll get that. I saw a question that kind of came up twice, and it says, what if a document has an acknowledgement and a jurat, or it's a hybrid and you have to kind of and for those who can actually do hybrids, how
That was Paula's question, Sharon's question.
Okay. Well, there was a couple of people, so I didn't actually read it from Ms. Sharon, but sorry, Ms. Sharon. I actually thought that was a really great question when you have to notate it, for two different types of notarization.
Was there a question in there that I missed?
Yeah, so what if it has, what if the document has an acknowledgement and a jurat that you're doing for it?
So are you telling me that there's a use case for somebody who is providing a single stamp to a document they are notarizing, yet it is considered two sole and separate notarization acts? Is that what you're referring to or telling me?
I believe they would be providing a jurat and an acknowledgement for the document. So two separate stamps, two separate notarial acts.
So to answer at a high level, if you need to associate a notarial type to a document that we don't provide you, you can always select the other, and you could always type in whatever you want to refer to that notarial type or that type of notarization as. So if you did have something that was state specific or industry specific, maybe you just wanted to associate with it something that you were referring to as an acknowledgement / jurat, you could hit other and you could type the name of that as whatever you would like. Now, typically the way I would handle that in California is if they wanted to have those two things or that one thing notarized in two different notarial types, then I would have theoretically two different notarizations happening concurrently. I would have one where I am having them sign it and I am stamping it as an acknowledgement, and then they are going to go ahead and sign another copy of that document, and then I'm going to go ahead and provide another notarization as well with a different type of notarial act. It would be two documents, and therefore you would have two of the same document in the notary journal entry. So I personally and professionally wouldn't and don't deal with in California a situation where I need to do what you're referring to if I'm understanding the request correctly, but you could always change the name of the type of notarization to fit whatever you'd like if you don't see it on that drop-down list.
Yeah, there are just only a couple of a handful of states that can actually do what's known as a hybrid certificate, Nick. So it's not common. And yeah, if most other states would have to have a signature to go with each certificate issued. So yeah, you're saying just choose the document twice. One you're marking as a jurat and one you're marking as an acknowledgement, but you've got a signature for each of those documents as well.
Right. Well, and what I love about the notary industry is that I'm always learning new stuff about how people do it in other states. I was surprised when I found out people can personally know somebody, and that's how they identified the notary, identified the signer. That blew my mind. You can't do that in California. So it's always fun to hear about these cool new edge cases because that is illuminating to me. And if I can build a product out to be better suited for something like that, then I am always happy to. So I love hearing this kind of stuff that takes me off guard a little bit.
So Nick, do you want to go ahead and let's take Guy's question? Guy, do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
My question is what we were just talking about, and I will occasionally see a notarial certificate on a document that says Betty Jo acknowledges and swears. And
Yeah.
that's written in the notarial section that attached or printed with that document.
Yeah, well, your
So it
first,
is-
your first duty is to figure out if you can do that hybrid certificate in whatever state you're in. I don't know. what
Colorado.
state you're- Oh, Colorado says absolutely not. I can answer that one for you. But that same situation would apply, like Nick says, that you can change, what'd you say, Nick? You can change it to other and then add your own description.
Mhm.
for
So
the
when you add a,
certificate.
yeah, when you add a document to your document library, it will have to have with it associated a notarial type. So we give you a list of drop downs, and if it's not in that drop down, there's an other, and you could select other, and then you could title that however you'd like. So that's, you know, the workaround there for a situation where you have a very uncommon or a hybrid in this situation type of notarial act that you don't see on that drop down list. That would be the, but like you said, I mean, knowing if you could do that in the first place, or even if there's just one type of notarial act, maybe just the jurat covers that type of verbiage in your state. Every state's so different that it's really hard to gauge without being able to look at the state's code and figure out the type of document you're referring to. But yeah, changing the document types, notarial acts is super easy. You just do that in the document library.
And Guy, you had another question. Sorry, I just muted you, but I was trying to send you to unmute again. You had another question in the chat that I thought was a really great question. Could you ask that one as well?
So I do a lot of prison and jail notarizations. And in Colorado, the prisons will have a Department of Corrections ID that each offender has, but it's not going to look at all like a driver's license. It has nothing on the back of the license that could be scanned. So I'm assuming that would have to be just a hand entered.
I'm assuming the same. I'm assuming the same. Yeah, I've never seen one of those before. And typically there's a set of requirements for the application to actually pull those fields on the optical scan on the front. So if you have no barcode in the first place, then there's nothing embedded on the back. If you're trying to just have the optical scan on the front, pull that, it's probably not going to match up with the fields that are required within the software itself. So you would just have to manually input that information. And the same with the notarial type as other we just talked about. You can add an identification type of other to specify anything you don't see in the drop down. That is maybe a one-off or just something that's very uncommon or rare. So
Yeah.
I doubt that would scan successfully.
Yeah, the issue I'm up against in Colorado is I can't take an electronic device into the prison.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's interesting
And
because we have in California we see a lot of that where we've been around now for about 3 years, going on 4, and that started off as being a big concern, and it has become less and less of a concern now that I'm hearing notaries going in and saying, I have an electronic journal. I'm permitted to use an electronic journal by law, so I'm abiding by everything I'm supposed to abide by. And now it's up to you as an organization, the prison, for example, the correctional facility, to decide whether or not you admit or deny me. And a lot of times we're hearing that they are getting admitted in, and typically it's just with maybe another iPad or a different device. It's not their phone, so that it makes that institution feel like you're not going to be connected to the internet. And we do have that offline capability for that to happen, which is great. But we've also had experiences where notaries have said, yeah, they didn't say anything. I was able to go in and do my prison work. And I had my phone and I told them my journals on it, and they didn't argue with me. And that was the end of it. So a lot of it does come down to being confident as a notary with what you're allowed to do per your state's code in the first place. Like when we first launched, there was a lot of discussion about, are you even California compliant, right? You built this great technology, but can you use electronic journals? So there was a lot of discussion within the notary community in California about that. And unfortunately, we have a lot more clarity now because California has never added in the verbiage any specific requirements of the journal itself, including verbiage that specifies it can be electronic, whereas Colorado, as one state says, it can be electronic. So you have that to say, gosh, I'm I am written within the code compliant, and therefore I'm just trying to do my job as a public servant. And then, of course, it's your decision to admit or deny me to do my job. And if they deny you, then it is what it is, unfortunately. But we are seeing that it's more common and it's getting better. And as a similar talking point, people always ask, what do I do when I have to turn it into my county clerk's office or my Secretary of State's office? Do they accept it digitally? Typically, they don't. You would have to print it out and put it in a binder or some type of holder, print all the PDF files and then give it to them. That's typically what they're requesting. But we've gone from the counties having no idea what to do when they get this request from a notary who has an e-journal to being forced to deal with it because it's compliant with their state law. And now they have to figure out what they're going to tell their notaries to do. So those discussions are similar in that regard. Unfortunately, it's getting better and better across the board.
Yeah, and one of my things I had used to like to say to jails is, I'd really hate for you to deny me as a public servant to enter in for, because inmates still have basic rights. And some of those documents that you may be denying them getting notarized might not be so well if, somebody reports that. So, because we've had a lot of problems in Arizona until recently. They used to take the inmates' IDs and we could have no way to ID them. And they would, not bring up their ID and that sort of thing. So over time, we were able to get it changed to the armband for notarization, which this wouldn't work if we were approved in Arizona. It also wouldn't work in our jails because they still take the IDs, but now we're allowed by law to identify them by the armband. So I don't think we could be able to scan that in. Or would you have something in place for something like that?
So are you referring to how it would function with an identification that is an armband?
Correct.
And are you referring to the ability of our application to scan successfully that identification?
Correct.
Oh, that would probably be a no-go until I was able to look at the actual format of that identification and whether or not it's something we could pull. But again, unfortunately, it's one of those things where, even if one of these efficiency features isn't functioning well because of the type of ID or your online offline status, you always have the fields that you could just manually type that information into. So it might not be as efficient as scanning it and boom, you're good to go. But you're going to just type it in the same way you would have written it in your hardbound journal, and that's still better than nothing. But I would highly doubt that would be a supported document type for scanning anytime in the near future. I might be wrong, but I've never seen that currently, and I don't know how that would look in the future.
I want to do a last call for questions out of the chat. I think we've combed a lot of some of the questions were very, very similar. And I think we got most of them answered, but I want to do a last comb with the chat. But if you have a question, this is the time to, ask the person that knows the most about it.
Yeah, we got some good stuff here. A lot of people asking about the fingerprint scanner 149. Thank you for putting that in the chat. We do all the fulfillment in-house for that because this is the only scanner. So this is it. I don't know if you guys saw it earlier. This thing is really awesome. It's a solid piece of technology. It's internal battery. You plug it in, you charge it. It's all Bluetooth. The internal battery lasts a long time. It's nice and heavy. You could defend your home with it. Gosh, it's kind of got all of those things in one. But I love this thing because this is still like the one I've been using for 4, 5, 6 years since I started testing a long time ago. They just last for a long time. We've never had anybody that's had issues that weren't typically user error, which I love about that. So these things are great. 149. We do see the hybrid conversation. We had that as well too. Geneva, let's go ahead and hear what you have to say.
Okay. Let's say, for example, you never use an electronic journal and want to start using one. Is there a place you can kind of practice without going into the original, your original journal?
Yeah, so what I recommend for people who want to practice is start the free trial, 14-day free trial. You can create up to 5 entries for free, but don't save it at the very, very end, right? Do every step that we did all the way up to the end. And just like I showed you on the left side, not on the mobile app, I showed you on the web app, just don't hit the complete button, save it as a draft, exit out of that screen, and then you could delete that draft at any point in time. It's not going to be saved. So it'll give you the feel for everything without having to actually create a permanent entry. And you can do the same on mobile, get all the way up to the end, and then just save it as a draft, go back to the main screen, and you could delete that. That way, at least you can get your hands on it. You can feel it, touch it, see how you like it. And one of the things I tell notaries, especially notaries who have been doing this for a while, they have built habits on how they currently journal. We provide a really good solution, but the best solution is the one that you're comfortable and confident doing, because we're public servants. And so the most important thing is not me trying to hawk my product and get you to buy it. It's you doing your duty to your state, to your entity who you swore to. And if that efficient protocol for you is pulling out that hardbound journal, for example, and just writing that stuff down, then you keep plugging away on that. And if you're interested in trying something new, then yes, we have a great product, and I love it. But I do like to emphasize that journaling is so important to what we do, and it's often one of those underappreciated or underanalyzed kind of things where it just goes without much discussion. And if you already have a habit in place where you are confident what you're doing, and a lot of people might try it and they say, it doesn't make me comfortable, I don't get this technology, that's totally fine. But you can create that free trial account, 14 days. We don't ask for a credit card upon sign up, because I find that to be a shady business practice. So you could just create that free trial. If you stop using it, then it'll just go away. Now, the entries that are saved, because this question will come up naturally next, is we don't delete any entries as well too from notaries accounts. They're just saved there forever. Even if you cancel your subscription, unless you specify to us that you want your account nuked, we're not going to delete those entries, because we don't want any accidents happening where you accidentally had a lapse in your credit card payment and all of a sudden, oops, your data got deleted. That's not good, right? So the data is not going to get deleted unless you specify it to be deleted. But I think that should hopefully answer your question there on that one, Geneva. Did you have anything else to follow up with on that?
No, thank you.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I do see Becky said, can it be used on different Android, iPad, phones, everything? Yes. So Android and iOS, it works perfectly on both ecosystems just fine. iPads, tablets, phones. I like to just carry my phone with me. You saw I was doing a demo on my phone. The purpose was to be mobile, agile, in the field, on the go. I could just boom, boom, boom. Some people like to carry their iPad with them and then pull out another device that's specific for the journaling, and that's awesome too. And now that we have the web app, you can do it on your laptop as well. So a lot of different options, and it syncs between all of those. So the only thing it doesn't support is if you have one of those old Windows phones, which you probably shouldn't have anyways, because they stopped making those a long time ago. So let's see what else, if there's anything else.
We've had a couple of questions from David Merkatz. Couple of times, David, you are backed into a corner now. You're gonna have to unmute and ask your question so we can be sure what you're asking, okay?
Okay. Okay. So if you have a paper journal and you want to add yours to the web-based version so you can go fully electronic, can you do that?
So it's a tough question, because you really got to think about what type of data you want to transfer over. Most of the notary code specifies, what you do with the journal when you're done with it. So whenever I think about transitioning from paper to maybe Ejournal, I think of that transition being me stopping one notary journal and moving to another, which again, your law might stipulate what you're supposed to do and how you retain those journal entries. So for most of the time, for most people, I tell them, if you're going to transition over, just keep those hardbound journals, put them safe in compliance with your state's law, and then start fresh. But there are a lot of states where there aren't any legal requirement to journal anyway. So it's the Wild West. You could do whatever you want. You could have a lot of fun. So
Yeah, Florida,
in those cases,
from what I understand, Florida, it's optional to journal.
yeah. Well, I mean, and it was in New York until recently as well too, in Illinois. It's crazy to think about. A lot of these big states don't have the legal requirement, and Florida is one of our biggest user bases in Florida, and they don't have the legal requirement to. So you're right, it is pretty interesting. But on that note, what the direction we're going with this is so that you can backlog now on the web app the information that you want to backlog, but there are certain things that might not be reproducible, like a signature, for example. If you're capturing signatures, you can't transfer that over. And even if you did, it would just be an image of the original. So it would be a facsimile. Is that really what you want? Probably not. So we are going in a direction where we want to be able to have you backfill old entries if you'd like, but the use case is not as common, because typically the information would just be the location, the signer's information, ID information, the document information, and nothing that would have required that signer to be present and have that happen concurrently. So that's why it's a tricky question, because you could backlog all the data you want, with that who, what, when, and where, but you'll never get that signature and that true signature. You never get that true thumbprint in. There's some stuff that you'd have to go without. So a lot of times I notice the notaries who really want to do that are the ones that are like me, who are overly analytical, and they want perfection in their brain the way I do. So I just want to take all my old journal and have it in one spot so I can see all that data, and then I can get the insight into that data the way we're building these widgets out for. So, I want that. But then is that a best practice, and is that compliant with my state's law? So those are rhetorical questions, but hopefully that sheds some light, David, because it is a great question.
Okay. And how expensive is the subscription?
So you can either do a monthly or you could do a yearly. The monthly is 19 flat, and then the yearly is 168 for the year, which breaks down to 14. And each one of those comes with the same. It's all or nothing, right? You get all the features. We don't tier anything. You create as many entries as you want, as many drafts as you want, as many ID scans as you want. All of that stuff is all inclusive. So you got two price points: 19 a month or 168 for the year.
Okay, thanks a lot.
You got it. You got it. And I see Sharon coming up here. Sharon, how are you?
Miss Sharon Jackson.
The question that I have is the integrity of the signature. So when they're signing with their finger, right?
Well, they could sign with whatever they like. So if you have a stylus, you could have that stylus that they could use that. If you want to have them use their finger, like I have the pens. For me, my favorite are just like the kind of the larger rubber tip styluses. They work the best on Apple devices, in my opinion. So those work really well. I care about the cheap ones of those around, and that gets the job done. But that's a preference. So you could have them do the finger as well, whatever you want.
Yeah, because I was just thinking about, they always say, make sure the signature matches the signature on the driver's license or the ID. And by them signing with the finger, is that actually going to match, and with that, come up with say, okay, this signature does not match. How do we know that was blah, 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 all of that stuff. So that's what I was just wondering, the integrity of the signature.
Well, and it's a great question, because we've all been in the position where or if we're using an electronic software like this, where you'll have a signer who will sign something and they'll be fidgety with it, and they'll say, gosh, it's this technology, I can't get it to work right, it doesn't look like my signature. But I always remind notaries too that that's our position as a notary, is to see that person, right? To actually appear the person. I appeared you, I saw your identification, and somebody who took an oath as a public servant, saw you make that signature on that document. So that is about as much of a confidence boost as I could ever imagine anybody needing.
Makes sense.
But it is one of those things where it's like you do want it to match, but again, my job as a notary is to make sure that I saw you sign it, and if the lender wants to question it, then they can question me, and I could prove that I did see that person, and then hopefully that's the end of that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think I see something. Go ahead. No, I saw somebody talking about the exporting, but somebody looks like they answered that. So fantastic.
We have another hand raised here from Miss Susan there.
Oh yes, Susan, what do you got for me?
I noticed when I use my iPad, and it's a late model iPad, I've only had it for about 6 months. It's an iPad Pro 11. A lot of times the pictures don't scan, and I'll get an error. But if I do with my phone, which is also an iPhone, I'll get it'll scan for me. Is there a way to get it to work better on the iPad?
And
rather than buying a whole new iPad.
You're probably referring to the ID scanning, correct? When you say picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that one loops back to the conversation earlier about it being device specific, but there is a lot of it that is user user adjustment and user error. So you saw when I did it, it was super fast, but that's because I do it all the time. But I also know a great distance between my device and ID, and the lighting to get it just right. You don't want it to have a glare. I think the biggest tip I have for people is to don't overanalyze having it, for example, in landscape and making it super flat. You saw me, I was holding it when I scanned it. So I just held up my phone and I just hold it so that I'm not blocking anything on the front. I scan that and I immediately just turn it over and I just do the same without blocking that barcode, of course. It's a lot of times it's just trial and error for you as a notary and then the device you're using. Because sometimes I'll notice I'll get on and this is not to bash Android, but as a developer, they're not as streamlined and they're not as efficient as Apple in a lot of ways. And their cameras are a great example of that. The cameras a lot of times don't autofocus the same with as much quickness and as much accuracy. So if I have my Android device, the distance between myself and the ID itself typically needs to be different than on my iPhone. So it's tough because it really is device specific, but I would just sit around and play with it for a bit, kind of create a draft and open that up and just sit there and scan it, see what's going to be the best distance, to start from. A lot of times notaries start too far away. So most of the time, the problem is it's so close that the frame is totally out of whack, or it's so far away and it tells you to move closer, and then they're taking too long to move it closer, and then it times out, and then they're like, man, this technology sucks. And that's it's unfortunate because it happens, and I want it to be as smooth as possible for everybody. But yeah, hopefully you can mess around with it and find that perfect distance for that specific device. Because like you said, your phone, you're jamming through it, super smooth, no problem. iPad or whatever it is that you're talking about, not the same. So just keep playing around with it, and you can always reach out if you have specific questions or you have specific concerns that are not being mitigated by your practice, your trial and error.
Awesome, thanks.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Nick, I want to thank you for coming here today with us and showing us everything. One thing that I think is so important is that, for notaries, you have to be able to see something. You can hear it from a friend, you can hear it on the internet, but to be able to see it for yourself, the next step, guys, if you've watched this and you're interested, is to go get that free trial and just test it out on a few entries, see if it works for you. I've been putting in the chat all night a link. Nick gave us a great page for the presentation. I'm going to post it one more time. It also has his contact information on there. It was branded just for Notary Stars, which I thought it's the only presenter that we've ever had here that created a page just for our Notary Stars. So the least you can go do is go click on that, learn more. There's some videos on there, and I even saw that there were some tutorials on there, which I thought was a lot of good information. But I'm going to ask everybody here to please, because we have a guest in the house, if you are not naked or got the sandwich in your mouth chewing right now, to please turn on your cameras so that we can give our signature Notary Star wave, which is full of love, to Mr. Nick for coming tonight and presenting to us. I know some of you may be, even if you just want to put your hand on camera and not your face, let's light up those screens and let's give a warm Notary Stars wave to Mr. Nick. And my lights went off. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and staying with us. I know it's late on the East Coast, but thank y'all so much. And Mr. Nick, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back. And I do want to say this for those who stick around. Alexa, turn on my office. That's not what I want to say. I want to say this is from what I hear that there's going to be some announcements coming up about in the future, near future, right? But we can't say them tonight. And I know
that's correct.
I know that some of you here will really love that announcement. So next month, we're hoping to be able to make that announcement when I'll leave it at that. But I hope you will come back maybe next month with us, even if you just pop in for a moment, if we're ready to make that announcement, because we do a lot with announcements here, and we would love to have you back and just make that announcement again. And you can, if you want to add that announcement when that time comes to that page you gave us, I'll make sure that it gets circulated with that announcement as well. So the announcement is there's an announcement coming. We just don't know when that is. But thank you so much for, I think you're probably one of the greater presenters we've had, and I really appreciate that.
My pleasure, guys. I can't thank you enough for having me, and I hope to see you guys, hear from you guys, chat with you guys. Really appreciate what you guys do and help us continue to build this product. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys soon.
Awesome. Come back anytime.
All right. See
Thanks,
ya.
Nick.